All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight. So tonight we are picking up where we left off on the last stream, where we are in the middle of our refactoring effort. And we're going to try and close the loop on some more things. Before we do that, I'm going to quickly touch on some stuff I did off camera, just to kind of move this effort forward a little bit. And then, of course, before we do that, I do want to take just a quick second to thank the supporters of the channel, starting with our partners who are the highest tier of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon. They are Dustin Punt, Gaby Bashir, and Gerbolis Inc. I would also like to thank all the other supporters listed here. They are a combination, rather, of the other tiers of support over on Patreon, YouTube memberships, and Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated and helps me out with various expenses in running this project. So thank you all very much. And I hope it goes without saying that I appreciate each and every one of you viewers, whether you are here on the Twitch side or whether you're here on the YouTube side. We do simulcast to both. I do watch both chats. This is an interactive stream, so I do enjoy chatting with you guys as we go. So if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, you just want to chat, say hi, feel free to drop into stream and chat rather, and let's have a conversation, right? Bad Cop, good to see you. Hope you're doing well tonight. RCW, good to see you as well. All right. So, in preparation for this, it looks like I actually need to maybe adjust my green screen a little bit more. Is that better or worse? Yeah, all right. I'm still messing with that, by the way. I actually have an actual green screen behind me tonight. So I'm actually trying that out to see if that's better, and I don't think I have the levels quite right. Anyway, I think you guys can still kind of see behind it, so that'll be good enough for now. All right, so off camera, we did a couple of different things in terms of fixes and whatnot. So I think the last stream we had would have been, let's see, that would have been on the 6th. So, okay, so these commits that were here on the 9th were also done off camera as well. So we fixed a few issues around texture uploads. We fixed the Win32 platform presentation support check, so the one that we added on Linux. We also added the equivalent of that for Win32. And then we also fixed a bug with our default cube map generation, so that one was actually kind of stupid. So basically what was happening was we were freeing way too much memory, right? And the result of that was giving me the nasty bug that we were seeing last time with an invalid queue and all that other stuff. And so the interesting part about that is I was getting that error on Linux, but I was not getting that error on Windows. It was working just fine on Windows. Don't understand that. Don't claim to understand it. I don't understand why it didn't do the same thing on both platforms. I have no idea. But I did find and fix that issue. So that was an interesting one to track down. It took me a while to find that one. And then we also converted our font system to load from our app config, and we also fixed some material system load bugs and updated our shader system to be a little bit more dynamic. So with that, I'll just kind of quickly, the only one of those updates that really matters all that much is the one to the shader system. So I'll quickly kind of discuss that. Shader system get has received a little bit of an overhaul. So before, all we had basically was this logic that would search all of our already loaded shaders and try to get the ID of that, and then it would go ahead and pull up the shader and return that by ID, right? So just return a pointer to a shader. And if we didn't have it, we would basically bleat about it and fail. And so what I've done instead was we had sort of this logic repeated throughout the code base, which essentially would, this is how we loaded our shaders, right? So we'd load the shader resource, which is more or less the whoops, there we go. We'd load up the shader resource, which was more or less just the configuration for the shader itself. And then we go ahead and call the shader system create, which would actually do all of the loading of the uniforms and all that other stuff and setting all that stuff up. And then we'd unload the resource, and then we'd register it, right? So we're doing all of that in line now, so that we don't have to have this sort of dependency on where shaders get loaded. Whenever we do a shader get, or whenever we attempt to do this, we also say, hey, if the shader isn't loaded at this point, go ahead and load it. And that eliminates a lot of dependencies on where and when shaders get loaded. So that was a big improvement, one that I hadn't planned on making, but one that was kind of needed regardless. Conversation, you say, I don't know how to do those. I don't either sometimes. I wonder if the green screen would work better with an AI background removal still. So last time I was actually trying something, it wasn't quite AI, but it was supposed to be one of those smart removal things. But the problem with those is they're extremely slow, because it has to essentially take the image in, read all of that image data, process it, try to determine what's the background, cut that out, and then output it. And your frame rate is terrible, and it's laggy, and it's not all that accurate. Now, this isn't all that accurate also because I don't think I have my lighting in here set up correctly for it, so the screen is not the same color from one side to the other. But you can also see that like my fingers don't disappear and stuff like that, right? And I can move them quickly and stuff, and you know, they don't get cut off or just disappear. So I think this is going to be the way to do it. There's just a couple things I have to figure out with it. One is the screen is kind of small, so I had to like shrink the amount of camera space here, right? So like that, as opposed to, you know, it was wider before. But yeah, it does, I think, you know, with the exception of these areas around here, it is a little bit better. So I'll have to fine tune it a little bit more. Your computer's very overkill. Yeah, I mean this one kind of is too. But like, no matter like if you're doing anything more than a chroma key, it's generally going to be slower, right? It's not going to be as quick. Tammin, good to see you. How's it going? Welcome. I am doing well, thank you. How are you doing? The NVIDIA background removal runs on GPU and it's pretty quick. But it does lose stuff sometimes. Yeah, so that was the other issue, was like my fingers would disappear sometimes, right? Which just having an actual green screen seems to just work a lot better. But yeah. I just need to adjust it, I guess, right? Sister Grimace over on YouTube, a member for 5 months.
Work, Travis.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the support over there. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you for all the support you've given so far. I really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Speaking of good work, I should probably actually do some, right? Green screens are particular about lighting. Yes, they are. Yep. Shreyas, you found your way over here from Spiro stream. First time chat. Welcome. How are you doing? All right. So where we basically are at the moment is I'll actually just run this real quick so that you guys can actually see how far we've gotten. So we're back to the point where we're finally loading a window again, and we're standing up all of the render system stuff that we need, right? So if we look through here, we're standing up our plugins correctly. All of our Vulkan logic for the initial standing up is actually working correctly now. We're able to create our device. We're able to create our queues, our command pools, all that stuff, right? Swap chain, all that stuff is creating now. Our job system stands up. We do have a couple of OpenAL issues I need to fix, but that was a long-standing bug since before this refactor, so I'm not really worried about it. And then we actually have some default textures being created now. So that's our texture system being stood up. And then we also have our shaders actually being loaded and compiled on the fly. And so that's good. We're actually into booting the testbed application, so we're in the middle of doing that, and it looks like the boot for that actually completed, and we're in game initialize. We did load a some sort of an asset loader. I assume that's probably for the standard UI. And then it looks like we're basically looking at references within our render graph, right? So this is the area that I was saying we're probably going to run into some stuff where we might have to, refactor, move some stuff around a little bit because it's all brand new code, right? So we're finally back to our point where we have all of the initial stuff standing up and rendering, or not rendering, but initializing at least. And now we're back to the point where we can actually start debugging through our actual scene graph, or our render graph rather, and troubleshooting that. So, oh no, this guy. Yeah, so the only reason that I use this guy, and I get a lot of people that ask me about this, right, is I just use it for the debugger, right, because it's a visual debugger, and it's easier to use than a lot of the other ones that are available on Linux. And I can use this on Windows and Mac OS with the same setup, right? So I don't code in this, but I do use it for debugger. So you can use ClayingD with NeoVim, which is exactly what I'm using, right? So this is what I work in to code, right? But when I debug, I'm still using this guy for now. And that's probably going to be for the foreseeable future, because I've tried a couple of other debuggers, but they're not quite as good, right? Why not GDB TUI mode? Didn't like it as much. I just didn't find it. When you're debugging things that go quite as deep as a project like this, I didn't find it quite as quick and easy to use. Yeah, I wasn't really a fan, right? GF2 is one of the other ones that I tried. I also tried Seer, and those were okay, but they had some issues with getting the source files to load up correctly, and quickly, I should say, quickly and easily. It constantly fails to draw, and you have to refresh it manually. That too. Yep. Part of the charm. Yeah, and that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me, but like what does bother me is when I have a debugger up that I just need to like debug something really quickly and jump into the code, set a breakpoint here and be able to run the application to that immediately without having to really think about it too much, right? And unfortunately, this is kind of the best one out there at the moment, at least until something better comes along. I also have tried DAP UI with NeoVim, but I didn't really like that either. It really wasn't all that great either. Yeah, I'm only using it for the debugger. Yep, exactly. Okay, so we're getting to this point where we're unable to resolve references for node, and then frame begin. Right, so we need to take a look at the node frame begin. So that would be this guy. And it's saying it's unable to reference or resolve references for that node, which is probably because they aren't configured, if I had to guess. Although there shouldn't really be any references there. So let's see. Let's look at the node itself. So all we're doing in this node, let me actually make sure that this is correct, because I found a few of these that were mismatched too. So this is frame begin. So this is the node that we're currently looking at, right? So when there's nothing to initialize, nothing to execute. That is true. This is essentially... Oh, I see what's going on. Okay. So the only purpose of this node is essentially to figure out what our color buffer source and our depth buffer sources are. And so we need to obtain those from somewhere, right? So we have one source for color buffer, one source for depth buffer, and that is supposed to feed into these two nodes, right? So we have the source name here for the color buffer is framebegin.colorBuffer, right? So frame begin, and then we have color buffer here, right? And then we have, for this one, we have frame begin depth buffer. So we have frame begin, and then this has depth buffer, right? So it looks like we have everything here hooked up. But why it can't find, what was the specific? Unable to resolve references for a node. So let's unable to resolve references for node. Okay, so that's going to be in here. So when we do our render graph finalization, which is basically saying we've got everything configured and we just need to link everything together and resolve nodes. Oh, wait a minute, that's pretty funny actually. So this is render graph node resolve, which should return a Boolean if it's successful, should return true. So this actually just, I think, needs to be a not check. Right, unexercised code here. So that's actually not terribly surprising. That might have not have been an issue at all, except for that. So let's kill this and relaunch it. Yeah, okay, there we go. Lammer, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. DAP is nice, but a little clunky. Exactly. Yeah, that's my experience with it as well. All right, so we moved on from that one. Failed to find source sync forward.shadow. Expected source for shadow.shadow map. So, all right, let me look at this real quick. So we have shadow.shadow map. All right, so this is shadow. So let's look at the shadow render graph node. And let's go, I think it's here where we're initializing. Oh, you know what? We have some shader load code here that we can get rid of. So we'll do that. I think, though, where is our... Do we have anything called shadow map in here? There's the texture. Okay, so we need to convert that code to load shaders the new way. Not a big deal. We did not set up any sources or sinks, really? That's actually kind of surprising. No wonder it couldn't find it. Okay. So what I'm going to do, let's open up, I guess we can look at, what, Skybox? Yeah, we can use Skybox render graph node. Use this guy as an example. So we want the source config, right? So we're going to have one source. And let's see, where do we want to put this? Did we not even set up? Oh, we're missing a whole bunch of stuff in here. So here's the create. This is where this should be. We don't have function pointers or anything set up. we missed a whole bunch of stuff in here. That's cool. All right, so we have one source, and this is what we're going to call the shadow map, right? And what we're going to do here, we need to include k-string. We're going to call this shadow map. So this is going to be a resource type of texture. That's fine. And I guess the source value we'll have to set later. So we need that. We also do need these function pointers. So I'm just going to copy this as a template. And I'm going to say, was it shadow map or no? I think it was just shadow render graph node. So we'll do that and that. Because without that, the render graph system won't know what to call. All right, we'll rename this shadow map source. Okay. I think that's all we need to do there. We don't have any sinks for this pass because this owns its own texture, right? So we don't have to worry about that. Do we do anything in here? We should do something in here to create the texture. Here we go. Okay, so we do. These are for default material textures. Where is? Where is the actual internal texture that we use, though? We might have some work to do in this one. Looks like we didn't quite complete the refactor on this guy somehow. Okay, not a big deal. We can fix it. So the first thing we'll do, let's convert this shader load code to doing it the new way, which basically just involves this line here is really all we need. So I'm going to take this and come down here and put that there, and then get rid of that, and actually get rid of that, wait a minute, let's actually move this down here. And we'll say, if we're not able to get the shader, what we'll do is, this is actually going to be a error, and we're going to say shader for shadow render graph node failed to load. See logs for details. There we go. And then we can return a false on that one. All right, so we'll load that shader. We'll still get the uniform locations as we did before. That should be fine. And then we'll essentially do the same for this guy. So actually we could just do this, get rid of that. Failed to load shader for shadow map render graph node terrain. Let's convert this to error. Oops. Spell it right. And then grab all of this. Return false, right? And then we can get rid of that. Okay. What is terrain shader ID? Okay. All right, so we have that. And now when we go to load our resources, we have a couple of different things. So we have to create a texture map to be used across the board for diffuse albedo transparency sample. So what this is when we're actually generating our shadow paths for materials that actually have transparency, we need to sample the albedo map. And that's for like if you have a plane with like a leaf texture on it, that's so you get that transparent effect from the shadow, right? So we need to have a texture map that's used specifically for that, and then we just swap the texture out on it with each object that we render within this particular view. Let's see. So we grab the default texture to default back on initially. Create the texture map to be used across the board for diffuse albedo transparency sample. Wait, are we doing this twice? That doesn't seem right. Oh, one's for terrain, and one is for static meshes, right? Let's just note that. All right, so we do the same process for both of those. We acquire for both of those. Let's actually group these things together. Is this Wes term? Yes, it is. Yep. I love it. It's a great terminal emulator. It's shady in here. Yep. Nice. Shady Head Stash, first time chat. Welcome. How are you doing? Okay. So we set up that texture map. We acquire a default texture for it. Then we acquire the render specific resources for the texture map, which is basically just translates to a sampler. Then we need to reserve an instance idea for the default material to render to. So this is the default material that we use for rendering. So we do that. That acquires instance resources from our regular texture, and then ones for the terrain as well. You know what? I'm going to group these things together by shader as well, just so it's a little bit more organized, right? And then at the bottom, we set up like a default viewport stuff. It looks like I have some dead code in here that I might have left in here in terms of attachment stuff, doing things the old way. So before we do that, let me actually just scope. I'll scope off the static mesh and the terrain bit. Right, so that's going to end right here. Just to make that a little bit more clear that those are separate. Right? Okay, so we basically repeat the same steps for both. We probably could just like split this out into a function and just pass parameters, but I'm not going to bother with that for right now. Okay, so create a depth attachment for the directional light. So this would have been our old concept of attachment is where that texture would have been created and would have been assigned. So the texture that our source is going to provide needs to be created here. And I don't see anywhere where we're actually doing that. So essentially what we're going to have to do, there's going to be a few steps to this. So we need to create an ad break, because we have ads, because the Bezos has to get paid. Can't not pay the Bezos. Sergeant Pepper, how's it going? So for those of you who are new or are over on the YouTube side, we pause the stream whenever ads come up on the Twitch side, which is once every 30 minutes for up to 90 seconds. So we will be right back. You can see my green screen back here and how not wide it is. Almost done with ads. All right, ads are dead. So just to repeat, for those of you who are new here, we do pause the stream whenever ads come up, which is once every 30 minutes for up to 90 seconds on Twitch. Just so that nobody misses anything, right? Because nothing sucks more in a programming stream than things happening on screen that you can't see or hear while ads are playing. So we try to respect folks who have those ads playing, and we just pause what we're doing, right? I also put a timer there so that if you guys want to run and get a drink or something like that, you know exactly how long it's going to be before we get back. Okay, so I don't believe in here that we've done anywhere, actually, anything in terms of creating a texture. And in fact, we're not even destroying anything in here either. So that's good. So we need to create a depth texture that needs to be multi-layered, right? Because each cascade uses one layer of the depth texture. So let's see. How did we actually do? So I think what we're going to have to do is probably just do this from scratch, right? So let's do renderer, texture, resources, acquire. So we're going to need internal data, renderer. The texture's name is going to be do shadow, we'll just say RG node, shadow map, right? Texture type is going to be, I think we want 2D array for this. We want an array texture because it's going to be layered, right? So let's split this guy to, let's split this off to multiple lines, right? All right, so the width of this is going to be our config resolution, right? So that's going to be the same as this right here, right? So Our width is going to be internal data config resolution. That's our shadow map resolution. Internal data config resolution. Let's also split this off to a few independent lines, right? Channel counts. Channel count. I think we actually still want 4 for this. Oh, why did it do that? Okay. MIP levels. We are not going to use MIP mapping for this, so I'm just going to put 1 for that. And then our array size is going to be max shadow cascade count. And then our 1 second. You rock, thank you. Appreciate it. My awesome wife just brought me freshly baked zucchini bread, which if you've never had this stuff, it is amazing. It's kind of sweet, like I don't know, like a cinnamon bread almost or something like that. But yeah, it's quite delicious. So I will be munching a little bit on this. You have to excuse me. So our texture flag bits. This is going to be a depth texture, right? Whoops. So we have that. And then we need a handle to store it. Let's see, should we do it this way? Because I really need a texture pointer. It's really good if you can replace oil with applesauce. I've heard that. And that does sound good because applesauce is delicious. And this is really good too. Okay. So I think what we need to do, I'm just going to say for right now, the address of handle, right? Which we haven't created yet. That's fine. Whatever. I'm trying to think if we need to... Should I just use the texture system to create this? Maybe we ought to... Because I don't think our texture system right now has a quick and dirty way to create... Or a quick and clean way either. Way to create depth textures. You know what? Let's actually... Because I think all we can do... Yeah, we don't have a way to do depth textures. That's what I thought. So I might actually wind up writing a new function just to allow us to create depth textures, similar to how we would create some of these other textures. But I guess for right now, I can kind of work around that. So if we look at, here's our depth texture here. Okay, I did actually create this. So I guess all I really need to do is kind of fill that structure out. So this actually is going to wind up being the address of internal data, depth texture, render a texture handle, right? And then I guess we'll just kind of manually do, you know what, let's do texture. I'm just going to say T for brevity, and we'll say the address of internal data depth texture. And then I can say T dot, you know, width equals T dot height equals internal data config resolution. And then we have type equals texture type 2D array. Flags is actually we could probably just we could probably just set this stuff up here and then pass it down here like that, right? So our flags are going to be texture flag depth, and actually I think we want texture flag writable as well. Array size has got to be max shadow cascade counts. Channel counts is going to be 4. Let's see. And then we have MIP levels and generation and ID. Actually, what one is this? It's a U8. Okay. ID doesn't really matter because we're not using it in the texture system. We're not registering it there, so it doesn't matter. I think we got everything. Oh, except name. I guess we could put a name on it just for debugging purposes. Oh, so we'll say the name is actually say the name is that, right? And then we can just do right. Width, height, channel counts, MIP levels, was array size, flags, and handle. All right, and then I believe this returns a Boolean if it fails. Yep, so we need to check that. So we'll say if that happens to fail. Failed to acquire render resources for shadow render graph node map, and we can return false. What is this bleating about? Oh, missing a parenthesis. Okay. So that should be all we need as far as the actual texture creation goes. SciCode, good to see you. How are you doing? Welcome. Was implementing compressed BCN textures for my rendering engine and discovered that one of the most common compressors available doesn't handle gamma transfer function sRGB linear correctly. Really? Which one were you using? Compressinator by AMD? AMD didn't handle that? Could just be their exporter for KTX. Yeah, but even still, it seems like a silly thing to not support. Okay, so I wonder if they tried to support and ran into some issue with it, but like I can't imagine what they'd run into. Okay. So we've created this here. That means we should destroy it down here. Right, so all we really have to do here, because the renderer is smart enough to handle this appropriately if it doesn't exist, is actually, oh, that's hilarious. We do have the release here. That's funny. And then if internal data depth texture name is there, then we'll do a string free of that. And I guess we'll do, for good measure, so we did do it here. What was I thinking then? Did I just literally not notice it before? I guess not. Oh, because I did it in initialize instead of load resources. That's why. I am going to... Ooh, I would have forgotten that flag too. You know what? I'm going to take this section, cut it from here, and I'm going to put that here instead. But see, I actually did it partially right down here, right? I should have set it this way and then passed that stuff along here. Because this way it wasn't actually doing that. So what I'll do is instead of this, I'll just do flags, right? And I'll comment that for right now. Okay. I suppose I actually don't need to have this. I could just do that. Right? There's an issue created 1 week ago about a guy asking exactly that. So at least you're not the only one that ever noticed. Yeah, but that seems like a common enough thing that I can't believe somebody didn't notice before. I wonder if there's like a bunch of like canceled issues of people asking that same question and they're just like, no, we're not going to do it, and then cancel it. Sakellos Music, good to see you. How are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Don't mind me, I'm still stuffing my face with delicious zucchini bread. Stuff away. I shall. Okay. So That actually might be all we need to do in here then. Oh, we need to assign the texture map to use it in the sync. So, or the source rather. So we have, so we'll do self sources. We know it's going to be index 0 because we only have just the one. And then we want the value t to equal internal data depth texture. And we want the address of that. Dark Sniper is 93. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. How are you doing tonight? Hope you're doing well. So apparently not. You did go through the list of issues related, and the one from 1 week ago was the only one you could find. Wow. Repo appears a bit dead, though, and the devs don't really seem to pay too much attention to the issues. Well, that's a possibility, too, I guess. Maybe it was like one of those internal tools that they sort of just open sourced, and then they're just like, forget about it. If you guys want to use it, fix it yourself. Maybe I'll try NVIDIA texture tools, even though I do know some of the problems with that one, too. They all have problems, right? Or, you hear me out, maybe you make a new one that doesn't suck. You've already thought of that. I figured you might. It's a lot of work. Yeah. I understand biting off huge projects is work. I know a thing or two about that. I know what you mean. Ankosai, thank you for the follow. Or Ankosal. Is that an I or an L? I think that's an L. Let's see. You know what? We only have a few minutes till ads start. So Sakelo's music, fire your question away. Compulsive Starter, thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream. You have turbo, so ads don't matter. Okay. And depending on what the question is, I might be able to answer it during an ad break too. Unless it's something that would like benefit the whole stream, then I would probably wait. But all right, so now we should have our source. This should work. So let's try running this again. Let's see where we got. Okay. So now we're getting a seg fault. Okay. So node sync count. Well, that's definitely, I don't have any nodes that have that sync count, right? That's what is going on here. So we don't even know what this node is. It looks like rubbish, quite honestly. So what's our node count? We have 9. Oh, look at that. Look at that noob mistake right there. No wonder it puked. Okay. This should be is less than that. There's some dingus-oriented programming for you guys. Prime example. Yeah, no problem, Compulsive. Okay. Well, we got a lot further. Okay. So, let's take a look at some of our stuff in action. It looks like our stuff actually kind of resolved, right? So our render graph execution figured out the order of execution for our nodes automatically. So let's see if this is actually correct, right? So we have frame begin, which always has to be first. That's correct. Then we have clear color and clear depth stencil. That have to be next. That is also correct. Skybox comes next. That seems correct. Shadow comes next. That also seems correct because this doesn't have any dependencies. But Skybox depends on these, which depend on this. Then forward, which depends on clear DS, Skybox, and Shadow. So that is also correct. Then we have debug, which should come after forward. And then we have standard UI, which should come after debug. So it draws the UI on top. Then we have frame end. So, would you believe that our logic for a render graph that sorts and figures out based on dependencies automatically, can you believe we actually got that right on the first pass? That like never happens. Excited about that one. What is programming if not being dinguses? Truer words have never been spoken. Okay. So the question is, how as someone who is self-taught, how as someone who is self-taught properly approach the APIs? I've tried reading documents while looking at open source code on Git, and while I can occasionally make a connection between the two, I've never had any kind of aha moment that makes me think I'm actually developing any kind of understanding. The concept of APIs. Okay. So, what you're asking is basically how would you approach learning like what an API is, what its purpose is, and how to understand how to work with one? Is that basically what you mean? Programming is syntactic sugar for the dingus. No, not the dingus, just dingus. That's completely different. The handle number on your beard is awesome. It is showing through, isn't it? That's funny. Yeah, so how to understand and work with one. Okay, so all an API is an interface, right? It's an interface into something. So it defines a contract between one side and another side. It basically says, I have this list of functions. Each one of these functions has a specific bit of data that it expects being passed to it, and generally returns some type of data, right? And from that, you don't really have to be concerned about what is going on behind that API. All you know is that you feed this function something, it does something, and then returns expected data to you, right? And you can write tests against that. You can write a lot of things against it to verify that, right? But all an API is literally just that interface, which is nothing more than just a list of functions with a list of parameters saying this is the data that I expect to get from you. Whether it's a list of integers and a string or whatever that data shape may be. And then it returns something like maybe a Boolean, right? So a good example of an API, right, is oops, I'm trying to use code like it's Vim, and that's not working. So a good example of an API is Vulkan, right? So like we make calls to Vulkan, right? Like all of these, crap, ads. You know what? I'm gonna pause that discussion until we come back from ads, rather, because I think it would be valuable for anybody that might be interested in that. And in the meantime, I'm actually just going to pull up just scroll through some stuff here. Okay, here we go. Sly code took the word knobs. Automod didn't like the word knob. That's hilarious. How British does it think we are? It's hysterical. All right. Ads are dead. Okay, so yeah, instead of well, yeah, you know what? We'll use something else instead of that then. Let's look at instead of using Vulkan as an example, let's use OpenAL as an example. All right. So we scroll to a little bit further down here. All right. So this is what the header file for OpenAL looks like, right? And I'm not going to really go into any specifics here because it really doesn't matter, right? The concept of an API is much higher level than this, right? But we'll use audio as a result, or as an example here. So what we're looking at here is an example of an API, right? It's a series of functions that each have different types of parameters of different types of data that you can pass to them, that have different return types potentially. Sometimes they return nothing or void. Sometimes they can return a Boolean or an int, float, double, whatever. And all this is basically saying is, you know, hey, if you pass me, let me see if I can find a decent example here. So if you pass me the name of a specific enum value that you're looking for as a string, I will return to you what that enumeration value actually is out of this structure, this type, right? And so all this is literally all an API is it's a contract between the front end and the back end of something that says this is the shape of data I expect as my input, this is the shape of the data I expect as my output, and both sides implement it. You know, you have the back end that provides the implementation that actually is the driving logic behind this function, which in this case is the audio driver. And then you have the application that calls this function and interacts with it, right? And that's really all it is, right? Yeah, it's a black box is a term you'll hear a lot, right? So OpenAL is a black box, Vulkan's a black box, OpenGL is a black box, right? And web APIs work exactly the same way. The header is supplied by whoever made the software sometimes. In this case, it's who makes the software is a little bit nebulous in this case. And this is actually what makes it kind of a good example of an API. So in this case, this is a standardized interface, right? Which basically just says, these are the functions we need to have, these are what the functions need to look like, but we don't provide the implementation. And then the audio driver is what actually provides the implementation for these things, right? And the application is what calls these things. And so it's basically an agreement between the backend service or driver or whatever you're dealing with and the application saying this is the data that we expect when we're communicating with one another. So I hope that answers the question. I tried to keep it high level as possible. Yeah, it depends on the system. Yep, I'd agree with that. Okay, cool. Glad I was able to answer that. Tomer Stock, first time chat, welcome. Saw your videos on the game engine in 2022 on YouTube, look very cool. Started as a CS student the same year, awesome. Learning C this summer. What should I learn in concepts in C to follow this? Saw Dr. Chuck's tutorial on OOP and C. Do you use this? I do not use OOP, at least not very much. There's a couple of sections in here, arguably, that maybe I use it. But for the most part, I actually don't with this project. So all I would say that you need to understand is, at least to get started with it, would be a somewhat decent understanding of C. I do touch on it a little bit, and I do have a little bit of a sort of introduction to C course. I don't even know if I'd call it a course, honestly, on my channel, but like we go over the very basics of it. I need to actually expand it some. But yeah, I would say have a somewhat decent command of C, have an understanding of things like, obviously the basics like loops and branching, recursion, but also things like pointers and memory management, things like that. And if you have that, everything else should pretty much fall in line, because we actually build this whole project from the ground up. So confirms things you've been circling around without coming to a conclusion. Awesome. You have to use all functions for it to work properly. So not necessarily. Generally speaking, when you have an interface, in order to compile against it, you should generally provide a implementation. On the implementation side, you have to sort of provide all of those things. But the application or the consumer side of it doesn't necessarily have to use every bit of it, right? It's more so the back end that has to provide all of those endpoints. Yeah, so what SciCode says there is pretty accurate as well. If you're using a library or a driver, they will supply you a header file and or documentation informing you of the information you need to know about it. Yep. Yeah, it very much depends on the project itself. You might need all the functions or not. Yeah, so like for something like OpenAL, you're not going to need all of that stuff, right? But for something like Vulkan, you're not going to need all of it either. But you may have some smaller interface that you're working with where maybe you do need all of it, right? So depends. As with most things in programming, it depends is the answer, right? Been working with the Fmod Studio API, which seems to have those files. Yep, it would. At some point, I would like to actually make an Fmod plugin for this, but I have to look into licensing behind that stuff before I can do it. Because I know their licensing is not the most free thing out there. So it also has a libs static library. Yep. Yep, you're right. Super Gem over there. I have a question. Is there any real utility in making a transpiler to C? I want to kind of make a language and transpile it to C. Basically just want a good way to do generics in C at the language level. I mean, as an educational resource, I don't see why not, right? Essentially, you're just metaprogramming at that point. But then I would pose two questions for you on that. The first one would be, are you absolutely sure you need generics? And the second one would be, and I know I usually recommend against templates a lot, right? But sometimes they are a fit for things. So C++ templates sometimes can be a fit for things. I don't personally use them. I don't really like them all that much, but like usually you can work without those things, right? But as a learning exercise, that would be invaluable. That's my take on that. It's free enough if you're broke. Yeah, no kidding. Thanks for answering. Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. I hope that helped. I hope it didn't confuse you more than anything else. Okay, so we hit an issue here. And I just want to see what is going on here. So we compiled our shaders for the standard UI. That's good. Okay, this warning is just because we are... Oh, okay, we're outputting something, but we're not inputting it in the next stage. Okay, so we're outputting... output not consumed. So we're outputting something in the vertex shader that we're not consuming in the fragment shader. Okay, I'm not worried about that. So we are getting a segmentation fault in SUI panel. And this is in debug console load. So what is seg faulting? Oh, all right. Well, that was fast. We don't have state. Okay, so how did we get here? So we have debug console load, which... wait, does have a state? So we have a debug console state. We don't have an SUI state. Okay. All right, so let's look at the debug console. So when we create the debug console, we register a console consumer. We register for the resize event because it's a UI object. It needs to know about that. Okay. And then the next thing is load. So do we not? So we pass the SUI state here when we create it. But that must have been null because so let's actually put a breakpoint here and restart. Okay, so SUI state is null. And this is happening in application boot. So we're saying here the state. Okay, so we're probably doing something wrong with the plugin. That's what I'm saying. So get the standard UI plugin. We've done that. The plugin itself has a state, right? Does not look like it has a boot. That's fine. Does have initialize, destroy, update, frame prepare, window resize. Okay, so it has all that. Okay. So the plugin state is there. The SUI state. State SUI state is the state SUI plugin state. State. Okay. So we've gotten this plugin. Has this plugin actually been initialized yet? I don't recall seeing that in the logs anywhere. Probably be above here. Oh, yep, there it is. Plugin loaded. but I don't see the initialization of that happening. Right? And so we don't actually have state. So let's take a look at our standard UI plugin. So I think the one that we're going to want is not the system itself, but the UI plugin main. All right. Okay, so when we create this, we have the plugin state. Standard UI system config. So we initialize, set the plugin state to allocate. Standard UI system initialize using this. So, to me, it looks like we're creating it right here. So SUI plugin state. But that is null. How is that? Okay, so I guess we need to set a breakpoint there and see what's going on. So let's do this and relaunch again. Well, there lies the problem. There lies the entire problem. That never got called. This should have definitely gotten called right away. Okay. So let me think about this for a second now. So if we go to here, the plugin is registered. All right, so when the plugin system loads the plugin, it calls plugin create, and then it calls plugin boot right away. But initialize is not called right away. So initialize plugins. When does this get called? Get rid of that. Never gets called. Okay, so do I need to do... That seems kind of silly that I would need to do the initialization of the plugin from here. It returns to rubber duck mode. Nice. Let's see. C++ templates is how you ensure your job security. Duh. Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that. Maintaining those bad boys will keep you employed for years. Industry secrets right there, folks. We do have a dingus situation. This is definitely dingus-oriented programming, for sure. So what I don't want to have to do is, like, whenever I'm saying get a plugin, I don't want to have to, like, check it for initialization. Like, that's dumb. I guess one thing I could do, let me see if there's anywhere else. Let's see. So we have create here. Right, so this only uses create, does and this one I think only uses create. Okay. So that's why I think we never actually ran into a problem before, because we weren't actually using those entry points. So I guess this is probably a core engine thing, because this is the only plugin so far that uses that extra entry point. So here's our window creation, job system, audio system. Let's get to the actual boot, right? Okay, so I guess just before the application boot sequence. Oh, wait a minute. No, we do plugin system initialize plugins right there. Okay. So if we do that there, maybe we should move this over to boot so it's done earlier. Although, why? Yeah, because this never gets called because we're failing here. That's why. Which actually makes me question, if we are booting, we probably shouldn't be loading the debug console within the boot, actually. I think that's the real actual issue. So debug console create. Was that actually? Yeah, this create can't happen here. That's got to be an application initialize, which sucks. Well, I guess it only sucks because, like, any logging that we do here won't actually be captured by the in-game console, right? Like up to and including this, which is why we were kind of wanting to do this here as soon as possible, but we can't. We're going to have to actually we're actually going to have to move this here to initialize. Right, we can actually do that before initialize events or register events or anything else. I think I'm all right with that though, because it is a debug console. I don't need to be that picky over it. Okay, so yeah, here's our initialized plugins. Here's our K-plugin initialize for our standard UI plugin, right? So now that's being called. And now we should actually have a state. We don't. Really? All right, let me put this back. Put this back, actually. Widgeler, how's it going? Good to see you. Hope everything's going well. All right, so initialize. So this should be what is the memory requirement for this? A lot. Okay. So we set plugin state up. We initialize that. We register the factory. Okay. Okay. So if we set the plugin state up there, what's the Vulkan one? I don't want that. Why does this not yet have? SUI plugin state. So what if I did SUI plugin? Yeah, see, that does have an uncasted state. Plugin state state. So it does exist. Standard UI state is state SUI state. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it doesn't exist at this level. It exists at the plugin state. This needs to move too. That's what it is. This is happening too soon. And then this really needs to be there. Going good, binding CGLM and Jai. Oh, to Jai, then modifying it to have more. Nice. That's awesome. Famous jump the gun. Yep, exactly. Doing stuff too soon. Story of my life. All right, so I think I can get rid of that now. Okay, so these things should exist. So our SUI state should exist now. All right, so let's remove this and let that rip. Okay. Cool. Insertion failure. Move this to runtime. Okay. Sweet. Fix me. Awesome. Okay. So I guess let's take a look at 9slice and see what that's on about. So that was what, line 306. Oh, yes. I know what this means. Completely forgot I did this too. Thank goodness for the fix me's in here. All right, this is something else that needs to be moved to runtime as well. Also need to remove ads to runtime. So C Programmer 7, I do see that you have a question. Go ahead and fire it off, and then I'll answer it when we come back from ads. Got about 30 more seconds on ads, and then we can continue. All right, ads are dead. So C Programmer 7, I do see that you have a question there, so go ahead and fire that off, and I'll answer it as soon as I see it, or within a couple minutes. Tomer Stock, how should I approach learning Vulkan? Could I learn the basics of getting a triangle on the screen and then follow your videos, and reference online for more, or should I learn from Vulkan guides first? Also, should I learn C++ instead of C? I like C though. I'm learning Java at uni now. Okay, that's a loaded question. So I'm going to tackle that one part at a time. So I would say learn whatever language seems most useful to you. Usually when folks say that they want to learn C and C++, I usually tell them to learn C first because A, it's simpler, and B, it has a lot of concepts that will carry over to C++, and then there's a lot of things, especially around pointers, that you will understand better in C++ if you have programmed C first. So that's what I would do there, is I would learn C first and then jump to C++ and learn that. In terms of learning Vulkan, usually what I recommend is a combination of things. And one of those things is read the Vulkan spec. Yes, it is long. Yes, it is super, super dry and boring. But there is no better source to understand how to use Vulkan than that. That being said, read tutorials, look at examples of code, follow my videos. I do suggest a lot of stuff along the way in terms of learning, but also I kind of explain it as we go. There are also other series on YouTube that jump a little bit more in depth into the Vulkan specific stuff than I do, because we're doing it in the context of game engine here. So I only jump into Vulkan as deep as I need to for what I need to do for the engine, right? So if you're looking to learn and do a deep dive on Vulkan, this series is more basically how to use it once you're kind of already there, right? I do explain a lot of the concepts along the way, but yeah, there are things that I do gloss over as well. So you're really going to be best off looking at a combination of things. You're going to want to look at many examples. Look up Sasha Willems online. He's got a ton of great examples of things written in Vulkan, how to do different things in Vulkan. It's fantastic. But yeah, and then once you have done a fair amount of reading and you figure you have your head wrapped around it, I can guarantee you won't, right? And that's okay. Write a Vulkan renderer. Get your hands dirty, right? Actually, move beyond trying to understand the theory and trying to understand and jam all that information into your brain. Sit there and write the code, right? Because that's actually going to help it stick. Write a Vulkan renderer, throw it out, read the spec again, write another Vulkan renderer, do it a little bit differently, maybe add a couple more features, throw it out again, read the spec again, write another renderer, right? Adding more stuff, and just kind of build upon that every time. And the reason I say throw it out every single time is because you're naturally going to memorize via repetition some of those things and the way that some of those things work, and you're going to approach it slightly differently every time. And that's going to help you reinforce that as you're going. One of the things I always tell new programmers is never be afraid to throw out code, right? Don't keep every single little piece of code that you ever write. You'll be a lot better off if you don't do that, right? If you write something for an experiment, throw it away and write it again if you're learning, right? And that goes for anything outside of Vulkan too. I hope that helps. In C Programmer 7, I'm still waiting for your question, by the way. C is mostly a subset of C++ anyways. Yeah, I would say C++ is a superset of C, technically. But yeah. Okay. Oh, there's the question. Okay. Asked a question earlier about graduating with a low GPA, and now I'm job applying. I'm in computer science. There's a job, information security analyst, and it's a networking security job. I think I'm going to get this job, but originally I was planning on being a back-end programmer in C Python Go. Should I just take this job opportunity or take the risk, keep applying for 2 more months? Here's what I would say as far as that goes. In my experience anyway, it's always a lot easier to find another job when you already have a job, right? So take one, get that experience, because you are going to get experience from it, right? Yeah, one thing shouldn't necessarily prevent you from the other, right? I would say maybe don't work there for like 2 months and then jump ship and go somewhere else. That's not great, right? But one thing that it can do is at least that way you'll have, income while you're looking for something else, right? And even if you're somewhere where you're doing well and you're happy, always keep your ear to the ground, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. Layoffs are a thing. I experienced that earlier this year. And you never know what's going to happen, right? So always keep your ear to the ground, always be looking, always sort of be on the lookout for something better, because a lot of times there is, right? Even though it's in cybersecurity, yeah, I mean, get a job to get a job, exactly, right? So, it may not be related to what you do. Like, for example, right? My passion is programming game engines, graphics, stuff like that, right? That's ultimately what I love to program. In my day job, I write medical software, right? That's what I'm doing right now. So it's not related at all, but it's still programming experience, right? Experience is experience, right? It's never going to be a bad thing. There is valuable overlap, as Psycode says. Yep. Yeah. So it's programming adjacent. So I would say yes, take it, get that experience, right? Because there are aspects of it that are going to transfer over. Absolutely. Coding Joker, by the way, thank you for the follow a few minutes ago. Okay, so we were talking about this. This move to runtime. So the issue here is, this is in Kohi core, which isn't even runtime, right? It's core. This is where our containers, our math library, and that kind of stuff exists. In fact, I thought 9slice was in, 9slice right here, right? So the issue with this is our core library knows nothing about a renderer, knows nothing about geometry buffers or anything like that, right? It doesn't even know about the geometry system, right? The geometry system is in our runtime, right? Where all of our other systems are. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. So our geometry system, which is what that's referencing, is in here, right? So our geometry system right there. So what this was doing before was this 9-slice generation was generating the geometry, so the vertex and index data, and then it was also uploading it to the GPU. And this needs to actually be split out, right? And this was done for convenience originally when the runtime and the core were one library. That was called Engine before, and it made sense then. But the more I got thinking about it, like, that doesn't really make sense, right? We could generate the 9-slice data and not upload it at all, right? We could use it for something else. And so that really needed to be separated. And so I put it in a certain here with say, hey, let's move this to runtime. As a reminder, when I eventually hit this, like we did, that I need to move this upload section to the runtime. So I see that there's that there, and then there is a frame prepare, which really doesn't belong here at all. Like, this whole thing could be moved to runtime. So what we need to do, I think that might be the only things in here, though. That is, yeah. So the frame prepare and the generate, which really we'd probably just call, upload or something like that, should be moved. So when we go to generate a 9-slice, all we should actually get is, I believe, yeah, this out 9-slice is what gets populated, right? So we could call this, and then essentially this upload is going to be done by whatever is calling this to be uploaded, right? And then this logic here for the frame prepare is going to be called from that same area. So it might wind up being let me think about this for a second. So these should both be moved to the consumer of the 9-slice, right? Which ultimately means for us, if we trace this back, let's see, I need a little bit further back than that. Generate 9-slice here. So this SUI text box control load. Anywhere where we're calling this generate 9-slice, we essentially need to do two things. We need to generate the 9-slice and then upload that geometry data from there. And then we also need to have on a frame prepare, which I think in this case is probably going to be maybe upload or update rather. Because that's calling render geometry vertex update. So we could, yeah, we should probably do that on the update or maybe the render. We'll see. So essentially anywhere where we're doing that, we need to apply those two updates, and then we should be good to go. So what I'll do is I'm going to apply them one at a time. Anywhere that we have generate 9-slice, right? So thankfully it's not too many places, right? So these are the two 9-slice files itself, so we don't have to worry about those two. We're only doing it in the SUI text box and the SUI button, looks like. So let's do I guess we'll do the text box first, since that's the thing that we hit first, right? And so essentially what we need is that code. Upload to GPU, right? And then so instead of out 9-slice, this is going to be the address of type data. Well, actually, it's just going to be type data, not end slice, right? So typed data end slice, right? And we could just do that. can do that all the way down, right? So, oops. And I'm going to assume that that's just needs to be a dot. Okay. So actually, this bit here probably needs to be deprecated, quite honestly. Acquire from config. So what this essentially does is it builds, it constructs a, man, should I refactor that now? I feel like we're trying to stitch stuff up, not refactor more stuff. Essentially what this does is it takes all of the work that we did here for the vertices and indices and fills out a geometry structure, right? And then it also uploads that. And I feel like we can actually skip this step. Right, because it registers the geometry and then does create geometry, which does render geometry create, render geometry upload, which are both deprecated, by the way. Copies over extents, all that kind of stuff. I think this is a bigger can of worms than I want to open right now. So let's do this. Let's go to this, and I'm going to grab this. We are actually going to mark this guy as deprecated. Geometry system config or acquire. Will be removed in a future pass. Upload to render buffers instead. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to mark this as deprecated for right now, right? This is sort of the old way of doing things, and we're trying to get away from this. And since this also uploads to the GPU, like we want to split those steps up, really, right? So we don't want to be doing all of that at the same time. NK Coder, thank you for the stretch redeem, by the way. Appreciate that. Let's see. Medical software sounds interesting. I can assure you it's not. 3Creepio, thank you for the first time chat. Welcome. For a brief period, I had to deal with a mumps-based project. That was not a fun time. Yeah, so that's one of the things. One of the things my company does use that. Thankfully, the part that I'm working on does not. But yeah, that is used still, unfortunately. How often do you query the Vulkan spec when you're working? Quite often, especially if I'm doing Vulkan specific refactors and stuff like that. I usually have it up on a separate tab like almost all the time. Charting systems and medical imaging software. Yeah, so like the imaging part of that would be interesting. Yes. That's unfortunately not what I'm doing. But hey, you know, pays the bills. Can't complain about that. What does your K deprecated do? So that's a good question. So if we take a look at this, I don't think we've gone into this. It basically smacks this deprecated attribute on there and allows me to tag it with a message. And so what that does, if I can hit the right button here, what that does is a couple things. First off, the my LSP actually picks it up and puts a cross through it to say, hey, this is deprecated. But it'll also give me a warning when compiling. So if I build right now, and I've got some other errors because we're moving some stuff around, but it'll actually give me a warning in here because of the way that I have my build system set up, that it'll say geometry system acquire from config is deprecated, and then here's the message for it, right? And so this is a very nice way to be able to throw warnings when we're using deprecated stuff, but not stop the actual compilation, right? And so this will serve as a constant reminder that, hey, something's deprecated. I need to go in there and eventually get rid of it, as well as to end users eventually who may be using stuff that winds up being deprecated, but I don't remove it right away. I use a Mac M1. I know of MultiVK. Do you know how it uses, if it uses the Vulkan 1.3 features now? Wondering what spec version I need to read. So it's still in 1.2 with extensions. Is the bottom line there. So basically what I do is I use 1.3 stuff if I have it, and then I fall back to 1.2 with extensions if I don't. So yeah, you're going to want to stick to 1.2. I forget, I don't remember off the top of my head which 1.2. It's one of the more recent ones, though. They're working pretty hard on it, actually. They've actually added quite a lot of stuff. It's just most of the stuff that they're hitting now is like actual limitations where there is no metal equivalent to some things. So it's actually like a restriction of you know, because of the metal library itself. Tennis Parfait, thank you for the follow, by the way. MultiVK is still 1.2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep, that hasn't changed. Unless it changed like a week ago. 1.2287. Yeah, that sounds about right. They must have had another release then, because I think it was an older version of that not too long ago. All right. So we do need to do this, but we don't have the configuration. Generate 9 slice. Does this also? Oh crap, our configuration is here. Lame. Okay, we're going to have to approach this a little bit differently. This is not quite as easy as I thought it was going to be to move this. Not a huge issue, but you know what? I think I might convert this to just not do the geometry thing. Instead of using this deprecated stuff, I think I might just convert it over to do it the new way. Which will avoid us having to use this configuration crap. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. Left off. Convert this to generate just verts indices and upload via the new render API functions instead of deprecated geometry functions. Okay. And I'm actually going to do this so we don't lose track of that. And I mean, this technically doesn't build either. So I don't know that I want to upload it to the repo yet. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to upload it to the repo yet. Just because it doesn't build, that kind of sucks, right? It's just I'm not going to be able to do this tonight. So what we're going to wind up doing on the next stream is we are going to take we're going to change the parameters of how this 9 slice is used, right? We're still going to do all the generation of stuff in here, but instead of filling out one of these geometry config things and then having to like pass that around and generate this geometry structure, which is then also deprecated, and then also calling something deprecated to upload the geometry, we're going to basically set these things up at this point and then pass them into this function to fill them out. And then once they're filled out, then call the new functions that replace this deprecated stuff, which we already have. And this will be the first thing that we actually convert to do that. And funny enough, there's other stuff in here that's using it too. So that's kind of the plan. Let's see. I think it got released 2024/6/7. Oh, so that was just a couple days ago. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that must be fairly recent. There's both a core with extensions and core with KHR extensions. I would go with extensions. Yeah. KHR extensions are mostly like the platform specific stuff, which usually doesn't matter all that much. It's like the really only important one is like the swap chain one, right? For the swap chain, but yeah. You could open either of them and 90% of what you need is going to be there anyways. It's just you probably aren't going to really make use of the extensions right away anyways, aside from the swap chain extension and the surface extension. Right? Okay. Bad comment. Good to see you. Yeah, it has been a bit. No, the green screen is actually not new. I've had it for a while. I just hadn't set it up, right? So I'm actually still playing with settings to kind of get it right because it's still not 100%, but it is better. But yeah, I'm planning on using that a little bit more just because it allows you guys to kind of see behind me a little bit better, I think. So maybe I'll wind up moving myself over a little bit, right? Maybe that'll be a little better. So that, yeah, you guys can you have a little bit more space where you can see behind me. All right. Are you using an NVIDIA GPU? Yes, I am at the moment. KHR is like hardware specific as well, which is stuff that you can't really guarantee every device will have. True. Some of them are almost guaranteed, like the swap chain ones. Yep, exactly. That's the one I always use as an example of one you pretty much have to use. NVIDIA broadcast ends up looking better than a green screen, I've noticed. Okay. Is that a Windows only thing, though, is the question, because I'm on Linux. The background removal effect, that's what I use when I stream. Yeah, most of the background removal effects have just been too slow and laggy and not quite accurate. So like your hands, will disappear and stuff. So I haven't been really a huge fan of that. But if I could find the one that worked, that'd be fine. But like, my green screen is only I'm backwards here. That wide, right? So, I have to kind of zoom in the camera a little bit to to make it look decent. But oh, ads. Dang it. Guess I can't quite end yet. We have ads. Oh, they do have it for Linux? Okay, interesting. Oh, the forums say otherwise, though. Looks like they provide an API and that's about it. Is it a Linux-specific engine? Well, you know what? Let me answer that when ads are done. Got about 20 seconds left until ads are done, and then we'll be good. I guess it's pointing that way. All right, ads are done. All right, that was poor timing for ads, but happens. All right, so yeah, that forum link, Dr. Elliott, looks like they provide an API for it, but it doesn't look like they actually have the app, I guess. It's baffled was asking, is it a Linux specific engine, or do you really just like Linux? So it runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, actually. I just like developing on Linux. You missed the shelf in the back. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm just trying something new, you know. I may try to, you know, I'll try this for a little bit, and if it doesn't work, I can always go back. But I just feel like the extra screen real estate here is kind of nice. Let's see. Arvis, yeah. Arvis agrees. Automata's my best friend. Lol. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's a good program. Yeah. I don't feel like developing it for them on Linux. No thanks. Do you have a Git or a video? Wait, do you have a Git or a video on what you use on NeoVim? Yes, I actually do have. An article that I wrote up on my site with my NeoVim configuration. I'll drop this on both sides, actually. So if you click that link, it'll take you to an article that I wrote up on my website with all of my NeoVim config stuff there. It's like 99% up to date. You're just memeing. Green screen works fine. Yeah, no, I get it. It's all good. Arvis. You like the code and beard? Should keep it? Yeah. Does it actually show? Yeah, I guess it does. Or it's kind of my shirt too, I guess. I should wear a green shirt for lols. That's the quality stuff, yep. Dye my beard green so it just like disappears entirely. All right. So I think that's about going to do it for tonight. I'm going to look for somebody to raid really quickly. Thank you guys so much for being here on both sides, both on the YouTube side and the Twitch side. If you guys haven't already, I would ask you to consider following me on both of the platforms. I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow the channel on both sides. So spread the word also. If you guys like what I'm doing here, that's a great way to support me for free, and I really appreciate it. So let me find somebody to raid. They changed the screen again. I swear, every week when I go to like do another raid, they have changed the screen to select somebody to raid. I preferred the grid. But now it's like this. Which is not the most helpful thing. Let's see. Who am I going to raid tonight? Well, that person's asleep, so I'm not going to raid them. Let's do same category. I don't know why it doesn't default to that. All right. Not really seeing too much that sticks out to me tonight. Okay. This one could be interesting. Learning how to... You know what? I'm going to try this one. Let's try somebody we haven't rated before. This, I don't know if they just started or not, but looks like they've just got a couple of viewers there. And it looks like they're learning how to homebrew a Nintendo DS. At least that's what their title says. So I guess let's go that direction. Oh, did their stream just go down? All right, let's not go that direction. Their stream went down. Sweet. That sucks because that would have been interesting to see. It did sound pretty cool actually. Let me try refreshing it, see if it's still there. Wow, their search is terrible. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to re-scroll through the list. Yeah, now I'm not seeing it in the list. Okay. Might have to go with, you know what? Maybe that'll be back on tomorrow night because I'm not seeing it in the list anymore. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to raid Alveus Sanctuary because they are a non-profit animal rescue. And they have all sorts of like exotic animals in there and stuff, and it's really awesome. So I like to support their cause. They are a nonprofit, and yeah, just having the stream up helps them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will catch you guys on the next one, which is going to be tomorrow. So I'll see you guys later.